Hi, I'm Scott Atkinson with Our Detroit Magazine. I am sitting here with State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who
Well,
represents Michigan's 8th District. Senator, thank you for joining us today.
thanks for
Um,
coming to Lansing.
well, yeah, uh, Michigan State, alma mater. You are famous now. What is that like?
It is really bizarre. Uh, I had to have a conversation with my family. My mom, you'll appreciate this in your line of work. My mom apparently wrote a letter to the editor to the Washington Post and sent it to them and didn't give me a heads up because in her mind she said, I'm a nobody. They're never going to run this. And I had to have the conversation with her that there's a lot of people who know who I am now, and I'm very proud that you're proud of me and want to share that with the world, but just give me a heads up next time.
How do you anticipate this moving forward? I mean, is this for the rest of your life? Are you just famous Mallory McMorrow? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Well, for me, it's all about how you use it. And something that was important to me was recognizing in kind of the weeks following this speech that I gave and this viral moment that I had that this could either be 15 minutes of fame that I did not ask for, or we could leverage a microphone that had been handed to me and try to make an impact. So I pivoted fairly quickly to building up a PAC here in Michigan and fundraising really aggressively, not for myself, but for other colleagues and people running for the Michigan State Senate. And now we're heading into 2023 with a Democratic controlled legislature for the first time in nearly 40 years.
You woke up one morning to discover that you had been accused of something very strange. Tell us about that day.
Yeah, it was a Monday morning, and I remember I was working at home and I woke up to a text message from my husband where he had found a screenshot on Twitter of a fundraising email that one of my colleagues had sent out for herself. But in the email, she accused me by name of wanting to groom and sexualize kindergartners and wanting 8-year-olds to believe that they were responsible for slavery, which is not the way that I would say most people expect to start their day. And I really tried to ignore it for the day and go about my job. I had a busy schedule, but then it really set in that I need to figure out how to respond and respond in a way that I hope breaks us out of this horrible moment we found ourselves in politics where it feels like some people have the ability to say whatever they want about somebody else with no basis in reality and not think about the consequences just for their own political gain. And we've got to get out of that. The more that I thought about it and the more that I thought about what I was hoping to accomplish, which was really less about me and more about how do I speak to people who are on the receiving ends of these attacks, members of the LGBTQ community, for example, who have been the target of a lot of this. And I recognize that if I say Republican or Democrat, that nobody's going to listen, that it's just going to be white noise in both sides of the aisle or fighting with each other. And I really wanted to take a step back and make it about universal values. So I turned it all on its head and I talked a lot about myself and how I was raised and my mom and the fact that I grew up in the church and what that means in this moment when we have certain people who are using things like faith and Christianity specifically as a weapon versus people like me who have a very different view of that. It's an hour and a half drive from, my home in Royal Oak out here to Lansing, and I repeated what I had written down over and over and over to myself until I got to something that I felt really comfortable with. And then we were here, and it was time to say what I needed to say.
So there are certainly people who responded favorably. I'm curious, in that effort to try to reach the other side, to make it nonpartisan, have you heard from people who might identify as Republican or conservative who responded favorably to that as well?
I have. I think the sad irony of all of it is I didn't hear directly from any of my sitting colleagues on the other side of the aisle, which is just sad more than anything else. But in the weeks that followed, we have been inundated for months with voicemails and emails and letters. I have a P.O. box, and for weeks and weeks and weeks, it was stuffed to the gills with people writing me their life story and what it meant. And I was really expecting negative feedback, and we got very little. And it meant a lot to me to get outreach from people who said, I'm a lifelong Republican and I stand with you. You know, you stood up for just universal values, and this shouldn't be about party. I heard from people who are all ages and all religious backgrounds, people who said, I'm Christian and your version of this is my version. I heard from people who were Jewish. I heard from people who were atheist and said, thank God there's somebody standing up and not using this to hurt people. And that really reassured that, you know, maybe I'm in the right place after all to be able to do this.
What are your top priorities? What do you want to see happen?
I have introduced over 40 bills over the past 4 years on every single issue I ran on in 2018, and I've never gotten a hearing on a single one. So when a reporter reached out and asked what I was looking forward to next term, I said, passing a bill. And he said, you know, you're probably going to get to do a lot more. I came into this job having lived in 5 states. I am not a native Michigander. I know that is a scandalous thing to say when you are a local elected official. But of all of the places that I've lived, there is a passion and an attitude in Michigan and Metro Detroit that's just scrappy, and it's full of heart, and it's people wanting to figure out how to work together to move forward that you just don't get anywhere else. So for me, it has always been about, you know, this is a place that allowed me to become the best version of myself. And I ran for office, you know, to give back to that. And we've never had legislative districts that cross 8 Mile. With redistricting, now we do. And we finally have, you know, the mandate and the challenge that we have to bring the city and the suburbs together. We have to think collectively, and recognizing that Metro Detroit doesn't succeed without Detroit, which is a huge challenge, but a huge opportunity, and one that I can't wait to take on.
So you are one of our Detroiters for 2023. And I'm pretty sure it was me who called you up and told you that. What was that like?
It's exciting. You know, it's exciting because it's not just politicians talking to political people. Something that I remember vividly from my first campaign when I'm knocking doors and I'm going through all the neighborhoods was getting feedback from people who said that they didn't feel qualified to vote, that there are too many people on the ballot, there's too many issues, and they just didn't have time to dig into it. So something that I think about all the time is how do we break out and meet people where they are, recognizing that not everybody is reading the Free Press or the Detroit News or Bridge Magazine, you know, everybody who digs in on what happens in Lansing.
Or our Detroit?
But people do read Our Detroit. And this is what I'm getting to is like tapping into culture in the city itself, in the region itself, and the intersection of food and drink and that passion that drives people that isn't just politics, you know, and being a part of that and recognizing that the decisions that we make here influence all of those things. But first, I got to meet those people. So that's what it says to me is that, you know, it is that intersection of I am not just an abstract figure that does work here, right? I'm a part of the community. I care about this community. And this is the relationship we're going to have moving forward is how do we all move together to just improve this place that we all love so much.
And so long term, the question you've been getting a lot is what are your long-term plans? So do you anticipate continuing this job? Do you anticipate maybe running for a seat in Washington? What are your long-term plans?
You know, one of the most frustrating things is that it feels like we, as a country, devalue local elected officials. That if it's not on TV all the time and it's not happening in Washington, somehow it's not important. And that was a huge part of my reason to recognize I've got a platform that a lot of state legislators don't right now. And if I can use that to bring attention and time and resources to talk about this place where, you know, the legislation that comes out of this place is going to impact your life a lot more than anything happens in Washington. And something like 80% of Americans don't even know who their state legislator is. So for me, I'm in the place I need to be.
You were once a designer for Hot Wheels, and if I'm not mistaken, you have a car that has your name on it.
I do, and let me tell you, if you want to run for office in Metro Detroit, having your name on a Hot Wheels car is a great conversation starter that is nonpartisan. So yeah, I've got my name on, can see it at the very bottom, probably not, but it says Mallory. This car is the maximum leeway. Leeway Chang was one of my colleagues, still there, and he designed this graphics package and put my name on a Hot Wheels car. So every 4 year old thinks I'm really cool.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.